on naturally, if we're so busy in academic settings and getting them ready for structured sports and so on, that we don't give them time for this. It seems like we don't have time. How's this going to get my kid into Harvard? He can't just play around in the water all the time, you know. But how's this going to help his SATs?
Sure.
But the childhood itself has its purposes. You know, for every time there's a season or whatever the expression is in Ecclesiastes, every stage has its own value.
And there's something to be said about raising a confident child.
Yes.
Yes,
and if
absolutely.
you put them in a sport or something that they're not good at, and
That's right.
then they feel overwhelmed by it, then they're not going to get in those schools anyway because they're going to be scared to death.
Well, how many kids drop out?
That's right.
Who
In their first
put
year.
into Little League and soccer, and then as soon as they have a choice in the matter, they quit the whole thing
That's right.
because they've been overpressured and overstrained.
What would you say is a happy balance, Kamyra?
I think a happy balance is knowing your child, having them express the interest, setting limits, don't have too many academic activities, but also having rules that if the child expresses an interest in soccer, that he or she must fulfill that commitment for the season. They can't just drop it on a whim. There's no quitting. However, if your child comes to you and expresses feelings of being overwhelmed with the schedule in its entirety, then it's up to the parent to look at examine the schedule and see what we can do to make space. You really have to know your child. I know a child who is clearly overscheduled to the point where he can barely speak to people. I know the other one who's doing lots of activities and happy. He's eager to go to each one.
Right. And so that's
you have
okay.
to know it's okay. And I couldn't keep his schedule. He is busy all the time, but he loves it.
But I love what you said about making them stick with it, because I think, you know, there is something to be said about a lot of times your tendency as a human being is to give up on something when it becomes difficult. And you'll never know. I mean, if you say you want to do piano and then you realize you have to practice and you don't want to do it, but if you push them just a little bit to stick with it, then perhaps they'll, and that way you're not really pushing them, you're just saying you made a commitment and now you have to see that commitment through, and then it's fine to switch to something else.
You're teaching frustration tolerance.
That's right.
Okay. Which is also very important.
Right.
Okay. So the children, the age range that you deal with at the Albert Ellis Institute are typically what ranges?
5 years old up to 95.
Okay. And what are some of the problems that you do see, especially on the younger ages?
We see a lot of anxiety, performance anxiety, what Kamyra was talking about, what we call low frustration tolerance.
Starting at 5 years old.
Starting at 5 years old. They can't say that, but if you watch them play, or if you have them play a board game with you and they're not winning, they want to stop and move on. And I think that comes from this message that I have to be perfect.
Aren't some personalities just very competitive at nature, though, and they just, my 5-year-old refuses to lose, and so I typically accommodate him by letting him win.
Right.
My husband, on the other hand, you know, he's not going to let him win because he wants to teach him that you can't win at everything. But isn't that also part of the problem, just different personality types?
Absolutely, there's different personality types. Some kids do better with a lot of different activities and other kids don't. I guess the question I'd ask is, why is this child in my office then?
Right. Right.
There's something going on.
Do you find that they're easily distractible? They can't concentrate?
That's right.
I think some of it is the electronic media that lures them in. I mean, we have
In what
channel
sense?
changers, you know, where if you don't like something immediately, you change the channel. So both adults and kids. I found myself getting into this habit of changing channels. You can do it constantly.
Too many options in our...
Well, and it's the stimulation. The video games are very fast. They're alluring. But the electronic media I think, can overstimulate, and the kids they get programmed for instant gratification. So when you mentioned that, made me think. When you mentioned if they don't like the game, the way the game's going, they want to just quit and do something else immediately. And
I think that also comes from the message that I have to do well at this because that's who I am, as opposed to what I do.
So they have to succeed at all costs.
Right, absolutely.
A parent who doesn't want to put their children in, doesn't want to expose their children to any activities, quite frankly, until they go to kindergarten, and just wants to spend time going to the park and things like that. Is that okay?
Yes.
Are there adverse effects to that?
No.
No. Okay. Okay.
Well,
so save that money for college.
Anything could be called. Go ahead.
No, I would just say that typically, no, there's no adverse effects. But again, you know, if a child wants to be out with other children and wants to be engaged in something, and for your own reasons you're holding back, that's where it could become problematic. But overall, kindergarten is still very young.
Yeah.
I'll point out one seemingly adverse effect that parents feel. When you're applying to kindergarten
Yes.
in this city, especially in Manhattan, and especially if it's a private school,
Yes.
if your child has had that type of childhood thus far, then you don't have anybody of professional standing to write the recommendation to say that you have this wonderful super kid.
I have to admit I've been there, and through the process at 3 years old of trying to get my son in, you know, one of the independent schools, I was told that he needed to be in some kind of a kindergarten program because most children in America go to daycare starting at a certain age, and I was almost made to feel like I was I don't know, abusing my child for not having them in activities at a young age.
I wish they would change that. These are educators, and they have a responsibility to know what childhood is like, and to know that children need a childhood, and they can benefit from an informal, play-oriented childhood. They should know this. This bothers me that they're requiring letters from other professionals.
Absolutely.
They should relax on that.
And not just letters, they want them to be able to walk into a setting, walk into a preschool class and just say, hi, I'm here, my name is so-and-so, and I'm glad at 4 years old, and if they've not been exposed to strangers in that capacity.
So this pressure is coming from the schools.
It's coming from a lot of directions.
It's coming from society.
Schools, society.
And of all people, early childhood educators, I wish they would change this. I hope they will start thinking about it. I think people are starting to think about, rethink some of these issues.
Okay, we have to wrap up, but Dr. Doyle, I want you to leave our viewers with a thought today. Mothers out there, fathers out there who are watching, they have a little child, and they need to make a decision, quite frankly, about activities and what kind of activities, any activities at all. What would you say to them?
Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the motivation? Is it driven by anxiety, or is it driven by a real wanting for your child to become good at something, enjoy themselves, and learn on their own? So I would have the parents ask, why am I scheduling or overscheduling?
It is okay to relax a little bit as a parent.
It's necessary.
Okay, thank you all very much. This was very helpful information for me as a mother. I'm sure other viewers. We are out of time today. I want to thank each of you for joining me. Thank all of you for tuning in. We'll see you next week on New York Now.